Hello, Ryan Lasanki here. I'm just doing a video on focus stacking, a technique that a photography technique that you do in Photoshop that you use for basically blending several images together. I originally tried to record some movie or some video data of the process of actually taking the photographs. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, I don't have that data. So basically, I'll give you a quick rundown of what I did, and basically, I just took I took a number of photographs. I took 60 photographs. The camera that I'm using actually has a focus stacking function where it kind of steps the focus in very marginal lengths. When I took the photos, I load them into Lightroom, and that's where the rest of the video will begin from. So with that in mind, let's see some focus stacking. All right, so I got my nice fresh lime water here. It's delicious, and basically, so I've taken the time to upload my photo or download my photos onto my computer. I store them all on an external hard drive here, which I work out of. I've imported them to Lightroom. I have them in a folder all together, and now I'm ready to start working on them. So one of the first things that I'm just going to do is basic things, correct for chromatic aberration and profile corrections. This photo at the front, I kind of took another shot, maybe to make sure the background, I had something for the background and the foreground, but I kind of like how the background is in this one, so I marked it red just to give myself a notice that I'm not going to use it. I also noticed that I got this toothpick in here that's from shooting it. Maybe if I scroll down towards the end, like we might have that somewhere in focus. That's something I'm going to have to do something about. Basically looking at some of these photos here, okay, I can see, oh, here we go, here's the toothpick. Here's the toothpick right here. It's in focus. That's going to be one of the photos that we're deleting from here. But basically, what I'm kind of looking for here is I want to make sure that I've got this edge here. This is one of the further back points here, and so just want to make sure that that's in focus. I'm going to kind of keep flipping. Maybe I can right around here, yeah, so that's perfect, and then it'll start coming around this side again. I'm just going to mark this photo here as kind of, maybe right around here is that further out point. I'm just going to put a color label on it. Let's go yellow. That's kind of, and just double check these photos here. Just want to make sure that edge is okay. If I have the toothpick, I have to have that edge. So just kind of going through here, making sure I've got that edge. If I have, oh, here we go, almost there. That's pretty close, pretty close. And we're kind of getting a lot of this fruit in here now. That's pretty good for that edge. Basically, if I have that edge, I'll have this edge because this is around the whole thing. So I'd say that we're pretty good with that in mind. I'm just going to make whatever edits I need to do here. And then, maybe basic, bring up my highlights a little bit. Greens are a dominant color. Do I want to saturate those a little bit? Maybe yellows a little. It's looking pretty good. For the most part, the exposure is pretty good. Sometimes I play with the exposure curve. I don't think I really, or the tone curve. I don't really think I need to do that in this case. Shadows, nah, I can just leave that as it is. Clarity, it's sharp enough as it is, so I don't think we really need that. Contrast, does that help? Maybe not. Let's just go here. You know what? I'm actually pretty happy with this photo with minimal adjustments to it. I don't necessarily think it needs a whole lot, so maybe just take the vibrance up a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, so this is the photo that I marked that was that last edge there. I'm going to go a few photos past there just for good measure, I think. So I'll grab this and go all the way back here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sync these settings. So it's going to grab the settings that I performed on the first photo, and then it's going to apply them to the rest of them. Once it's done doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click, edit, open as layers in Photoshop. Okay, so now I've got all the photos loaded into Photoshop as layers. Basically, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab them all. I have this TK Action panel. It's a plugin. It's mostly for luminosity masking, but I find it's got a few other features in there that I really love using. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and use the focus blend. This might take 30 minutes, upwards of an hour, something like that. It's a pretty lengthy process. So I'm just going to let it go, and I'm going to come back when that's done. Okay, so I'm back here now. I went out for the afternoon. I went to go take a walk. One of my first loves is nature photography. So that's great that I get a chance to go out and do that while I'm waiting for my photo to compile here. So one of the first things that I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of take kind of a cursory look at this photograph here, and now we can see, I mean, we got all the layers here on the right hand side of the screen. These here are basically just masks. So if I grab one of these photos here and I just kind of grab the mask, it kind of shows you what's going on here. So for people familiar with Photoshop, you know what I'm talking about. But basically the areas where it's white is what's showing, and the areas where it's black is what's not showing. So you can see down here that I've got a variety of masks on all these different layers. And what my focus blending tool does is it kind of auto creates that. So now I can kind of take a cursory look, and I mean, we looked at the other photos before, and we could see how there was maybe not necessarily, or each one had a thin band of what's in focus. So kind of going through here, you know, we got this edge here, maybe it's got a little bit of a problem to it. Right around here as well. Maybe this area could use a bit of work. You know, I kind of noticed there's a patch right here in the middle of the photograph that's a little bit fuzzy, and down here it seems like we've lost a bit of the detail in the photograph just because it's grabbed information from the wrong piece of the photo. And again, we've got this toothpick here that we're going to have to get rid of. The toothpick we're going to do at the very end. That's going to be the easiest part of this photograph. But essentially what this tool has done for me is it's gone through, and I can grab like any sort of individual layer, you know, like, and just select each individual layer. What's going on here is the tool or the algorithm has allowed me, or not allowed me, but it's done it for me, is it's gone and it's selected areas that it thinks are in focus, and it's masked off all the areas that aren't, or it's kind of tried to do this so that it has the most complete picture with everything in focus. I'm gonna, you know, I love having the foreground there. What I'm probably actually gonna do is maybe on the foreground, you know, like I can grab that mask, and you know, like this is the area where it's masked, and for example, you know, I really liked the foreground in that first image, in the background as well. It was great. It was probably the most blurred because the focal plane was closest to me. So one thing that I might do here is I just hit the X key on my keyboard. I got the brush going here. I'm just going to make that brush a little bit bigger. And what I can do here is I can paint in white on this mask, right? So if I go back to this view of the mask, I'm just painting in white here. And really what that's doing is it's giving me, and because this layer is what's on top, it's going to show up first, right? So I'm going to go in and I'm going to grab a smaller brush. Let me just zoom in a bit first here. Grab a smaller brush, and I'll be kind of going through this, and this is really the way that I'm going to be editing the rest of the photograph, right? So here we have this, and basically, I just kind of going through. I'm not gonna make you watch me do all of this, but basically, you can get it pretty close. This edge here that I've just worked on, like it might be close enough that nobody's gonna notice but me, anyways. No matter how hard they try, right? Because I'm the one who did it, and I'm going to know. So I'm just going to turn that layer off. But basically, what we're looking at here, so say I want to get this going, that might actually be part of this mask as well, right? Yeah, so I can see that there. So I said I wanted to get rid of that area. This one's going to be real easy. I just take that brush and I paint this in. And you can see how that detail just came right back. And the reason for that is because this layer is on top, and so basically that's what we're doing when we're doing this. Oops, I didn't want to do that there. I can actually see that if I paint some. Oh, sorry. Let's undo that too. The trouble is, there's, because everything else underneath is masked off, then what I just erased there is there's nothing left underneath it, so it's fully transparent. But what I'm going to be doing for the next part of this is I'm going to work on this area here, for example, and I want to bring that shell of the fruit back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom. I'm just going to hide all the layers but this layer. And okay, so what I'm going to do here is I found one spot already. And oops. I want to make sure I got that mask selected. I got my black brush so I can mask this off, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint this over there because that was one of those areas that was out of focus. Now if I bring this back, what we can see is that there's this whole area that's disappeared, right? So what I kind of want to do here now is build this photo back up from the bottom, and it can be a pretty lengthy process. If I just turn this mask off, okay, this is not the area that I want. I can see that from this, but I also know that I don't want this, so I'm just going to paint that out there too. And basically, this is my manual process for doing this. As you can see, it's pretty lengthy. If you have a better suggestion for me, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. But basically what I'm doing is I'm going through all of these photos, and I'm going to start from the bottom. And yeah, you know what, this is part of that area that's out of focus there too. So I really just need to work my way through here, and I really just need to work my way through here and find that photo where that part is in focus. And none of these seem to be it. It was, if we go back to Lightroom even, you know, I might have a better idea, so maybe we found that around here. Okay, yeah, so this is, you got a little bit more detail here. So if I switch it over to Photoshop again, you know, like, okay, I got my file names here. So what did I have, what file is that? That one is 6023. So if I come back up here, by the time I get here, you know, okay, so now we got some detail in here. So basically, what I'll do is I'll yeah, it's kind of tough when you got this thing going here. So maybe no, it's a little bit easier when you have a frame of reference from the other photos that are underneath. So I'll just show you real quick what my intention is to do, and and then you'll see how that works out, right? So basically, um, okay, so anyways, you get the point, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this whole thing with a little bit more fine of a brush, and make sure that I've got all that part in focus, and then once I'm done doing that, I have to build this thing all up layer by layer just to get the whole image back now. But or I can, I'll just pop this layer here, which is the whole thing together. So once I'm done working on that area, then I can come back over here and I can work on these areas. So this whole process might take me a couple hours to complete. So I'll connect with you again when I'm done. Okay, so now I've gone through this photo, and you can see I've kind of cleaned up some of these edges here. But just for a quick example, I'll zoom in on this area here, and I'll show you what it looked like here. You can see how there's all this blur in here, and now a lot of that's kind of gone, right? So this seems to just be just the texture of the fruit in that case. The other area where we were kind of looking at before is right around here, and I'll just switch off. So this top layer here is a layer that the algorithm just compressed and made into a stack, or it compressed the whole stack into one layer. And so I can just kind of turn that off and on as a before and after, so you can particularly see around this edge here and this edge here. Basically what happened is there's another spot down here as well where you can kind of see that blurring, and what we're kind of looking at here is all the data has been captured, and it's in one of these layers, and it's just a matter of choosing what part of that data is visible. And so there's a few areas where I've had to come in and make a few manual corrections, right? So now that I've kind of got this whole thing going here, it looks pretty good. It looks a lot better than it looked good before, but now it looks almost perfect, right? So the next thing that I'd like to do with this sort of project is I'm just gonna create another layer here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna grab this. This is the spot healing brush tool in Photoshop. It's a pretty handy little toy, and I can just kind of go in here, and it basically tells Photoshop, like I want you to replace whatever was there with this. It's a good place to start for the most part. Sometimes I don't like the way that comes, so I'm just gonna go grab this clone stamp tool and maybe do a little bit more patching like that, and just I find that this really helps to blend in that that extra little bit that I think makes a huge difference. The other thing I'm going to do is there's some spots here, for example, what is this, a dirt, a hair, a fluff, something like that. I'm just going to use my spot healing brush and get rid of that. Sometimes some of these spots here, these are in my mind a distraction, like if sometimes like I might just go through and delete some things like that I don't like. I'll zoom out, take another kind of look at the photograph. Everything looks, if I take this out, okay, looks a little bit better already. I see that some of those spots are actually so small that you wouldn't have even noticed them. But it's part of my process, and it's something that I do notice, and I like to get rid of as I'm doing this. Otherwise, that looks pretty good to me. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this layer because I don't like it. Um, that's why I had to go in and correct this in the first place. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to, oops, hit the wrong button there. What I'm doing here is Command Shift, Command Option Shift E, which is basically merge visible into a new layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take all this junk, all these layers here, and I'm going to group them into my focus blend. Eventually, I'm going to go ahead and just collapse those down into, like collapse them down, merge them into the whole thing, so I don't really have to look at this whole thing. Okay. From here, I mean, it's pretty close to complete. There's a few other things I might do. So background in this case is pretty blurred out. It's good. I like it. One thing that I often like to do, I just kind of duplicate my layer here. Blend mode is overlay. I grab what we call a high pass filter. Usually around 3.0 is good. That's a tool for sharpening. So if I just show you what this layer looks like, basically all it's done is it's kind of found the edges and embossed them, and it's a good tool for bringing out textures. So if I kind of turn it off, then everything looks a little bit more dull in comparison. So that's just one tool that I use for sharpening. That's looking a little good. Sometimes I might blur the background a bit. I'm not really going to bother here. I'm just going to collapse that layer in. Okay, this is actually the point where I'm going to go ahead and flatten the entire image. Down here it's a pretty huge file, so it takes a little while to do some of the stuff that I'm going to do next. So now I'm just going to go in here and grab this tool here, RGB Lab Color Space. It just kind of pulls the image into a different color space. Okay, so now that it's kind of taken some time, did some processing, did its thing, basically what I've got here is the file. Photoshop through this tool on TK Action Panel has created a smart object for me on this layer, and it's pulled it kind of out, and now I've got it in the lab color space. So one of the nice things about working in this color space as opposed to the default option there is you can go grab the curves layer, and there's a few different channels here. So there's lightness A and B. That's your lab. So A is kind of reds and greens. So I can really kind of punch up those greens a bit. Maybe that's too much. We'll see here in a moment. And you can kind of see the difference here. Maybe that's too much green. Back that off a little bit. And you can see how I'm turning the layer off right now. You can see how in comparison, the photo kind of had a red cast on it before. Now it's a little bit green, but here I'll drop down into the B channel here, which is blues and yellows. So I can put a little bit more yellow in there, a little bit more blue. And this is just a nice way to punch up those colors a little bit. Work on that saturation without using the saturation tool, because I find that sometimes starts to blow out colors, create hot pixels in the image and that sort of thing. This I also kind of use to do color grading. So now I got this, it's a little bit whiter in the background, it's a little bit blue, but even there, I kind of like that, and to me it kind of makes that reflection pop out a little bit more. So now that I'm happy with that, I just go back in here, and this tool, it's easy enough to use, and it's just gonna merge that back into the main image for me. Okay, so now that we've got that back in here, I can turn this on, turn this off, and it just shows the effects of that color adjustment that I just made. I personally I like it a lot better this way. It's a little bit cooler, but the colors pop a little bit more in my opinion. Anyways, and at this point, I'm pretty much done. I'll merge the layer down. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope it was informative. Please hit the like button. If you have any comments, please leave them in the comments below. If you have a suggestion on how to do any of this better, also please leave a comment in the comments below. And if you have an idea for something that, if you'd like to see more videos like this, or maybe you want to see more videos of me actually taking photos in the field, let me know what you want to see, and I'll consider doing that. This is kind of my first video, so thanks for your patience, and hope you enjoyed.